Good housekeeping rule for you real quick. Restrooms are in the back on the right-hand side. And ladies, and feel free to exit on the outside aisles if that's the case, because it is being taped for this evening. My name is Darnell Wyrick, and I'm currently the president of MVCI, and some of you I've met, and some of I do see some new faces, and I'd like to, first of all, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come down. I think that obviously you see the importance of the meeting this evening in terms of the general plan, and the fact that we've been able to work with city staff to have them here to present to us tonight. But before we get started, I'd like to ask that everyone stand so we can do the pledge of allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. As you can see from the signs as you entered in, the evening event is actually being taped for later viewing, and there will be information to help you specifically to a site that you can take a look at the taping here. And it's been very nice that Barry would come in and take this upon himself to do the taping for this evening. A lot of times, individuals don't like heading down to City Hall as much as we'd like to have you there, and I'm sure our distinguished mayor would love. Mayor Righeimer, thanks very much for coming down tonight too as well. We really appreciate that because it speaks to the importance of this meeting here in terms of what the city's trying to do with staff. So before we get started though, I'd like to just make an introduction to the MVCI board. And some of you may know that there is another meeting taking place this evening. So we've got several board members who are not here this evening as a result of them participating in that meeting to kind of keep their ears and nose to the grindstone as to what's taking place there. So before we get started, I'd like to just let you know that we've got several of the members here that are very involved with our day-to-day operations from the standpoint of our newsletter, membership drive, and just, again, attending meetings throughout the city to help us stay close to what's happening as far as that's concerned. And so I'd like to just read their names off, and I'll go down the list and let you know that if they're in attendance, and the ones who are in attendance, if they could stand, please. And Robin Leffler, who is our vice president, is not here this evening for a personal reason. I spoke with Robin today, and she's sorry that she wasn't able to attend. She also felt that this was a very important meeting. It's been close to a lot of the road shows in the past, so she's kind of sorry that she's not here. But the fact that it's being filmed, she'll have an opportunity to take a look at it sometime later, okay? And then Arlene Jones, our secretary. Arlene's sitting there, counter, okay? Dennis Pope is also over at that Parks Rec meeting, and Dennis is our current treasurer for the MVCI, and he's also on our beautification committee. And Dennis has recently joined us, and it's been a great asset to the team because, you know, he is retired, he's able to attend the meetings, and those of us who are working, which I'm part of that group, are not able to spend those hours with some of these special committees. And then we have Joe Panarisi, and Joe's in the back there, and Joe is also part of our neighborhood beautification. And Marty O'Mara, which is, you know, part of our education committee, and Marty, being a teacher and staying close to the Newport Mesa School District, has been very helpful in letting us know what's happening from the standpoint of the Newport Mesa School District. And then Cindy Brenneman, obviously, has been with the board for quite some time. She's not here this evening. She is attending another meeting. And John Manley. John's in the back there. John's been very instrumental with the board and helping out with different committees and volunteering, and John's a part of that group with me. We're still working, you know. We're too young to retire and too broke to quit, so we have to keep working. And then we have Kim Strutler, who is in fact our editor and in charge of our membership. Specifically, Kim's done such a great job. You guys have seen the transition in the newsletter that we've been providing, and we've done a great job this past newsletter by getting it electronically sent out, and it's on our website. So that's another thing. And hopefully after this evening's event that we'll start being able to add, you know, the electronic tapings of events as far as that's concerned. But one of the things I would ask each of you before you leave is that if you haven't given us your email address, and we promise as a disclaimer that it will not be used for marketing, Amway or Transamerica or any of those other multi-level marketing things, that we will use it just to communicate with you and also to be able to disseminate, information readily, as well as give you the newsletter electronically. No jokes. No jokes. Okay. One of the things about MVCI, we constantly strive ourselves on educating, informing, and beautifying the community. But I'd like to make and bring clarification to the table this evening. We have board members who are involved in many different organizations throughout the community. And as a result of that, sometimes there's a commingling of responsibilities, and there sometimes is an association back to MVCI. But I do want to say that MVCI has a rule that we do not support any issue unless we as a board have agreed via vote that we will take a stance on it. So the disclaimer here is that individuals who are speaking to the city and other issues are speaking as individuals of the community and not as members of MVCI. And that's important to help bring that distinction, because it can, become a little convoluted, a little intertwined, but it's clarification that unless they state they're speaking for MVCI, they're speaking as individuals of the community, okay? And so with that, I'd like to just go ahead and bring up the distinguished guests this evening who have volunteered their time to come down to speak to us about the roadshow. And when you're using an iPad, try not to pick it up in the middle of a presentation, because it seems to just go and do its own little thing right here. And that's exactly what just happened, but I'm back to the page again, okay? And so what I'd like to do now is actually turn the meeting over to the city staff and to introduce them so that they can, in fact, give their presentation on the general plan roadshow. And at that point, they'll be able to ascertain questions from you and get information from you. And because I did state that Barry Freeland is recording this, at the end of the presentation, you'll have an opportunity to ask those questions and actually go on record with Barry if you'd like to have it recorded at the end of the session, so you can see it at a later time, okay? So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and bring up first of all, introduce everyone, because we'll have one presenter at this point. We have Gary Armstrong, which is our Economic and Development Service Director and Deputy for the city. We have Minoo Ashabi, the Principal Planner, and Raja Setharaman, and Raja is our Manager in Transportation Services. And of course, we have our distinguished Mayor Righeimer here this afternoon. So I'd like to turn the mic over to Gary and get the presentation started, okay?
Very much for having us this evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. I don't know if you followed the general plan workshops. We've had several. We have more formal workshops at the city with specific topics, and then we also have these type of more informal meetings. We come out to the community and talk about any issues that you'd like to talk about. So this evening we're going to do a very brief presentation to kind of get you thinking in big picture terms about the general plan and what it is and what it does, and then give you the opportunity to ask questions. And if you have traffic or transportation related items, the 405 freeway, for instance, Raja's here to answer those types of questions. And Minoo and I will try and handle the more planning related type questions. We did have a number of handouts on bike trails, master plan of highways, the actual presentation, and what we're calling the vision statement. Two of the very important things we do as a part of the general plan is create a vision statement that says, what do we want to see Costa Mesa look like in 25 years? And 2035 is the target year for the general plan, the focus of the general plan. So it's looking out 25 years in the future as to what we foresee for the city. And that vision statement goes to the city council for their review and approval. Also, there's a land use alternative that goes to the city council for their approval, and staff and the consultant will prepare several different alternatives ranging in growth and focus areas, and that will go to the city council. And there's a what's called a preferred land use alternative that'll be chosen at a public meeting. It may be several public meetings by the city council, and then that will provide the general direction for us. So, Minoo, can I?
Carrie, would you like me to these? Can everyone see? Okay. Oh, you want
Is that legible? Maybe the bottom may not be. I'll read that for you. But the general plan's a blueprint of the city. It's 10,000 feet, big picture. It's like, okay, we're going to decide we're going to go north, we're going to go south. So we're deciding to go to San Francisco or San Diego. That's the general plan level. Whether we take Harbor Boulevard to get to the 405 and go over to the 5, that's more on the zoning code level. But the bottom says a good plan is like a roadmap. It shows the final destination and usually the best way to get there. And that's a good description of what a general plan is. It also provides policies, programs, and gives direction. So when the Planning Commission reviews projects or City Council reviews projects, they rely on that general plan for the general direction. Next slide, please. So as I said, the general plan's long-term goals, establishes locations and general densities, and then we get to the zoning ordinance. After the general plan is approved, the zoning ordinance has to be revised to be in cooperation with the general plan, and that's more specific, specific streets, what the zoning is on those streets, what's the allowable density, those sort of things. So that's kind of a down-the-road item. And that's specifically what you can do or not do with your property. Are those fairly legible to everybody? Next slide. So why are we doing the update now? Well, several things have happened. We went through one of the worst recessions we've had since 1929. Hopefully we're coming out of that. We're seeing a great deal of building happening at the city. Things are looking better all around for Orange County. We've had significant changes in population. Funding sources have dramatically changed for cities. Redevelopment agencies have been taken away by the state. State is adding more prisoners to local county jails, et cetera. So several factors have changed. And also just every 10 years we try and look at the general plan. We're currently looking at only 3 issues in the general plan. And next slide. Those are land use, housing, and circulation. There's other issues that need to be looked at, but currently we're only looking at those, and it's a phased program. Safety, noise, other things are included in those other elements, and those will come later. I'm going to talk about some of the demographics affecting our city and our county right now. As you know, we have great weather here. It's a great spot. It's near the beach. And we attract a lot of attention, and a lot of people want to move here, especially after seeing the Rose Bowl game. They tend to move out here, and not only from our nation, but from other nations too. They come to South Coast Plaza and they say, "Wow, we'd like to live here." So we have a great deal of in-migration. Next, we also have a growing population internally. People are still having babies, and most of us would like our children to be able to live in the same neighborhood. So estimates are in the 340,000 range to over 400,000 people will be coming to Orange County over the next 20 years or so, and could be more than that. We also have 3 very important freeways in the city of Costa Mesa. And not all the trips on those freeways are starting or ending in Costa Mesa. So just Newport Boulevard, for instance, which is a freeway, is over 150,000 trips a day coming through our city and outlets onto regular streets, and the freeway ends. And there's not a whole lot of control we have over those things. Those freeways are controlled by Caltrans and the state. And our traffic has to cooperate with those, and Raja can answer some of those questions. We also have some very interesting demographics in age. The projections are that the older population, the baby boomers, is going to grow dramatically in our city. And actually the Y generation, the youngest group of adults that you measure, is proposed to shrink. And that's the typically the ones that have young children. That will impact our schools and several other things. So it's important to consider these kinds of things as we look at land uses in the future. So there'll be obviously a much higher demand for senior housing and all the requirements that seniors will need in the future. Next. Yeah.
Do you have any percentages on the population?
Yeah, well, there'll be some more slides on that in a second. So, numerous cities throughout Orange County. The state actually requires each city to take what it considers its fair share of that population and provide housing. And so among these cities, those 400,000 people will get distributed. That's regional housing needs numbers that come from the state. And if we don't provide some of that housing, a lot of our funding from the state gets taken away. So there's pressure, even though we may desire not to grow, there are many pressures that push that growth towards our city. Here's a graph of that population projection showing about 6,000 coming to Costa Mesa. Other estimates are much higher in the 10,000 range over that period. And this is from the census data. So 2030, they're in about 116,000 range. Minoo. And this is growth countywide. The darker the color, the more quickly that city grew. So two cities adjacent to us, Newport Beach and Irvine, you see are the very dark color. They grew the fastest in Orange County, and we're second to the lowest in growth. You see the lighter color for Costa Mesa. They're second to the lightest color. Also, other cities grew in the number of houses they provided in the county, and Irvine, again, was at the top of that list. Newport a little less, and Costa Mesa even less. But Irvine, as you know, has more greenland, more open space, more availability for greenland development, whereas our development is typically redevelopment, as we're fairly well built out. Here's that population percentages you asked for, ma'am. I'll show you. And those three large spikes, the blue is Costa Mesa, the green is Orange County overall. You see the three largest spikes are in the 25, 45 range. Add 20 years to those, and if nobody moves, the great majority of our population is going to be in the 65 to 85 range, and that's why those projections are that the baby boomers are going to grow dramatically in our city. Those spikes are going to shift to the right over the next 20 years. Something for us to consider. So we're going to open up the discussion in a minute. I just wanted to tell you we do have one upcoming event that's important. It's a more formal workshop that I spoke of. It's on the 16th. And it's the second one on circulation, and Raja's the star of those circulation workshops. We were able to talk about master plan of highways, bikeways, how we might improve bikeways, and that will be at City Hall on the 16th. So what I'd like to do now is answer any questions for you, and anybody's welcome to speak. I'll try and repeat the question so that everybody can hear, and if it's transportation, I may pull Raja up. If it's political, I may pull the mayor up instead of me answering. But you had a question now?
Yes, I do have a question. How far are we from building out?
We're considered about 95% built out. There is, in the existing general plan still has a great deal of growth. If every lot, for instance, there's a number of lots along Newport Boulevard on the east side that are zoned R2 that allow up to 12 units to the acre. Many of those have one or two houses on them still. So if every one of those lots went to 12 units to the acre, could be a tremendous amount of growth potentially in that. So there is a great deal of room for growth even under the existing general plan.
You're talking density then, aren't you?
Yes, that's higher density.
And do you have any figures on the density, the apartments in Costa Mesa versus the homes?
Total number of
Percentage?
total number of apartments to homes. I don't know if we. Oh, renter versus owner. Yeah, we have, it's about 60-40 on the renter side, and our city is higher in that ratio than most cities. As you go more southerly, southern Orange County cities have a higher owner to renter relationship, flipped around 60-40 often, or even higher. And it's part of phenomenon of the market. And we do have a number of colleges here that promote more rental.
And do you find that, I don't know how to put it exactly, but that it's more desirable to have homeowners than renters, home ownership than renters? And looking to the future, it looks like it's going to get denser and denser, which means more apartments than homes.
Potentially. I think there is a desire by the city council and many of the residents to try and improve that ownership ratio, and a lot of that depends on the type of product that's developed.
But you need space for that.
Correct. There are higher density for sale products that are ownership focused that do appeal to owners to stay there.
And I have another question. How are you addressing senior housing?
Yes. Yeah, the housing element does address senior housing, and obviously that's going to be an important factor if these projections for our city do come true. Yes, ma'am.
In this context, what do you mean by product?
Product is a housing type, stacked flat condominiums, apartments, townhomes, single family, detached. And that's one thing we're looking at the city is a lot of developers now are promoting a smaller lot project. There's a gap currently between affordability wise between apartment, townhome, and then there's quite a gap. And then the large, what we consider large lot, single family, 6,000 or more square foot lot. There's a pretty good gap in there between the affordability factor of those. So they're trying to put something in here so that young families with children can afford a detached single family home. And in order to do that, it has to be on a smaller lot. They tend to be a little more vertical in appearance, and we're getting many applications for, a 3-story product on a small lot. And so we're trying to devise an ordinance to accommodate that product where it's appropriate and where it can fit in, because currently under the current zoning, in order to do that, it requires a number of variances be approved. And that's unpleasant to a number of the residents and elected officials too. Yes, sir.
How is this fair housing going to be determined? How much? What percentage?
As far as what the state provides us, being more built out, we tend to get less. And right now, our arena number is very, very low from the state, whereas Irvine and some of the other cities is relatively high. They look at many factors, how much affordable housing you provide, and your ability to provide additional housing too comes into play. So more of that housing will tend to go towards the cities that can accommodate growth better than we can. Yes, ma'am.
In relationship to how we build on specific lots, and you're talking about doing more of the single houses and many houses on a lot that will be accommodated. How are we going to have a control so that, it looks to me like the way it is now, if you want to change something, you have to work a little bit at it. If we change the parameter and then the builder never has to really work at it. I mean, I want to know how much control we have, because I see a real tie between the density of the building and our traffic situation.
Can I make a statement on that
Sure.
real quick? Because I think
Please.
it's going to put up front. There is nothing in this general plan to change the zoning in the city. And if you live in Mesa Verde, there's no change
Yeah.
at all. The changes that are being looked at are some of the overlay areas on the west side. And then there's a whole conversation about what to do with the motels. And there is one motel, we actually do on Geisler, and that could be affected, but, you know, Mesa Verde, there's
Yep.
no, I mean, I'm coming from wrong, there's no change for most all the cities
Correct.
in any way, shape, or form, where this could be a status quo plan. The issue is to look at the west side, the circulation issues on the west side. I think the motels, you know, we got that may be something we're gonna look at to try to get rid of some of these problems, but there is no change here, so I think people start talking about density, they're thinking they're talking about an R1 neighborhood like this. There's no change here.
It's a good point. None of the R1 neighborhoods are really impacted. What was the question, Jim?
Question, what-
Well, the car would just moved out at Baker.
That would stay, that's, well, whether the public property owned by the school districts, if something happened here, or a church property, or whatever happened here, we'd have the same size lot and the same deal. There's not gonna be any change in this. It's just
Yeah,
not-
but to answer this lady's question too a little bit, when a project comes forward, a developer proposes something, we look at a general plan, does it fit in that? We look at the zoning, does it fit in that? They do have the potential to request a general plan amendment or a zone change amendment, and then that project will be written up by staff. We'll look at the environmental impacts, and that will go through the entitlement process, and there'll be several public hearings and opportunities for you, for the public to comment on the environmental review, come to the public hearing and show your support or opposition to the project. And then the Planning Commission has to look at all this and make a decision whether to approve the project or not. And if something was incompatible with your neighborhood, say a school property decided, the school district decided to sell a property to a developer, and he came in and proposed high-rise residential, 5 stories. Probably not compatible if there's single-family homes right next to that, likely would not be approved. But that's a discretionary decision by the Planning Commission, the 5 members of the Planning Commission. So 3 of the 5 of those planning commissioners would have to approve that project. You also have the opportunity to appeal that decision to the city council, and then you'd have the same public hearing process, review, and your ability to speak at that at the public
To
hearing.
be clear on that, the general plan's in place, that would take, a 5-story, that'd take a general plan change
Right.
specific to that
Just-
neighborhood. It wouldn't do it. The thing the council looks at is what's there and what's kind of being traded for. There's a distinction between what they might do to get rid of a motel that has 500 calls for service. And, you know, let's say this church wanted to leave, okay, and I know they're not wanting to leave. There is no reason in the world to give more density just so the church gets a bigger chapter. This is just a piece of land. It doesn't, there's no negative impacts, they're fine. A school district has property, because if you put more units on, all you're doing is selling the land for more money. That doesn't do anything for the community. It doesn't change anything, and if you're right in the neighborhood, there's no reason to do it. It only really comes up when you've got a problem issue and you're trying to fix the problem issue, and the value of, let's say, a motel is so high that you're never going to get rid of the motel. There's the prostitutes and all that. We were lucky over here to have the Grazadillo family who did the fresh and easy, that whole 1/3 of a mile. When the 50-year leases came up, they just kicked the motel out. Remember our lovely motel here? They just did it. Other property owners keep them, and they're a big drain on us. So I think that's the thing that you'll see we're going to focus and look on. But if you're on the east side, the west side, these areas in here, Mesa Verde,
You're gonna be-
it just...
Should have clarified
we're not
that.
here to give somebody more money for their land. It fits so many houses, and that's kind of it. You have to have something pretty big, and the general plan's in place. to go to like the example of 5-story, that's a general plan. That's like the base document has to be changed, not a zoning.
That was an extreme example for illustration purposes.
Yeah, okay.
So there is a check and balance for, you look at the zoning thing, and then, but you had mentioned that maybe if there's a change in the general plan, then some zoning things might be, that was what I was addressing, you mentioned that.
Yeah, there's the
that
potential.
yeah,
So
potential.
along Newport Boulevard, for instance, if there's a number of problem motels, there may be some leniency there.
So basically, there's still checks and balances. That's the main thing.
Yeah. And the elected officials do listen to the people that come and write in and make comments. I haven't gone over here for a second.
Is there published data showing the variances that are accepted or rejected?
Yeah, that's all available in the staff report. We just had one the other evening on Santa Ana Avenue. It's 8 units and 12 units to the acre on that, and it had a number of variances. Planning Commission approved that. That project has been appealed to the City Council, for instance. So it'll be going before the City Council, and that staff report lists very carefully each of the variances required to make that approval decision. Does that answer your question? Yes, sir.
One of your handouts tonight is on the master plan of highways, and it has a number of things listed in red as proposed. What's the time frame of those, and how do we find out more?
Raja's going to give me a break here.
If we could ask that you repeat the questions, so
Yeah,
that
sure.
everyone else will hear it, and we can it on tape as well, that would be really helpful. Gary and Rob.
Yeah, can you repeat that?
May I ask a quick question? What is your definition of circulation?
Oh, that's a good
Does that mean traffic flow?
Let's show that. There it is. Yeah, here is the definition of circulation. In the circulation element, what we look at are the roadways, bicycle paths, pedestrian paths, everything that has to do with transportation, motorized and non-motorized. And at general plan level, we look at a big picture again, as Gary mentioned. It's to look at on a big picture level, do we need a 4-lane roadway or a 6-lane roadway to handle the land uses? So land use and circulation are very related. So as you develop your land uses, you improve your circulation. You know, we have, as Mayor mentioned, we have the Grazidio family developed on Harbor, and we saw a need for a signal at Harbor and Date, so that got conditioned on the project, and we implemented that signal. So those are the kind of improvements that get in when projects come in, and as land uses get developed. And then on a big picture, we widens roadways too. It has been a while since we took a whole street and widened. Victoria, I remember, was the last big one that we did. Then we, again, you know, the city, you know, we mentioned is 95% built out. City is built out 95%. You know, it's pretty much we are at where we should be, or it's 95% done. Our circulation element shows that the number of roadways that need to be built now is very minimal too. If you can go to that picture that shows. It's hard to see, but there are some red lines in this map, and so it shows not much in terms of roadways that we have to widen anymore. In Mesa Verde, there's only one red segment, which is Baker, and it used to be a 4-lane roadway. We narrowed it down to 2 lanes, and it's not going to go back to 4 lanes. I guarantee that. It's working fine the way it is. The volumes are low enough to handle the traffic, so it's not going to be going back to 4 lanes. It works fine. The other issue that Mesa Verde community has is Geisler Bridge. You know, as you know, 3 years ago, a few years ago actually, 2005, There was a large study done by OCTA, Orange County Transportation Authority, on the Geisler Bridge. That bridge connects, because it connects Costa Mesa and Fountain Valley, I know the community supports and the city supports removal of that bridge outright, but it could not be removed. It was kept on a reserve status, which means we have to make certain improvements on our roadways, like Harbor Adams, and we'll be under construction Harbor Adams very soon. I'm thinking about by January we'll be under construction to make some widening there. And similarly, other neighboring cities like Huntington Beach has to make some improvements. After we do all of that, in 2020, there needs to be another study done for Garfield Geisler. And if at that time everybody agrees, and I mean it has to be agreed by Fountain Valley, most important by Fountain Valley, because they're the only ones who are opposed to removing that bridge. If they agree to that, then that bridge comes off the master plan. Until then, that bridge is in the background. Right now it's in a reserve status. And we are working with OCTA on how to address that. Any question? Yes.
In the background, like we thought the 405 was, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's staring us right in the face. You want to bring us up to date?
Yes,
on
yes.
405?
Yeah, I want to acknowledge Commissioner McCarthy also. He's in the background there. He just walked in. The 405 issue. 405, we have been working on 405 since 2005. At that time, it was called Major Investment Study, and I gave an update to this at this meeting a while ago. We looked at different alternatives, and then OCTA again started an environmental process. They looked at 3 different options. One is to add 1 lane between Brookhurst and 605, add 2 lanes between Brookhurst and 605, or do a toll lane all the way from 73 to 605. And all along, OCTA was supporting 3. We had a public meeting, several public meetings late last year. Our city council passed a resolution supporting alternative 1 or 2 that would add 2 lanes. It would continue what we already did. We have 6 lanes on our side of the freeway here, and it narrows down to 4 lanes as you go north. So it makes sense to add 6 lanes all the way up to 605. So OCTA took that recommendation and they approved alternative 1, which adds 1 lane. Then Caltrans came along with another study. That study was triggered by a federal law, federal transportation law called Moving Ahead for Progress. That law said if you allow single riders to ride on the carpool lane, like our governor signed a law that allows low emission vehicles, like if you have a Nissan Leaf or Toyota Prius hybrid, electric hybrid, you can drive on the carpool lane even if you're a single rider. If you allow that, then that particular carpool lane should operate at a high level of service. It should operate at 45 miles per hour 90% of the time. And Caltrans did a study and they figured or determined that 405 in this area is not doing that. In addition to 405, other freeways also on the same boat. So the recommendation that Caltrans has to fix that problem is to go with managed lanes. They call us managed lanes, which is toll lanes. In that, those vehicles will still go for free, most likely, but then other single riders would have to pay, and even if you're 2 people in the carpool lane, you'll pay at some rates. Those kind of decisions are not made, but that's the recommendation that Caltrans is making to OCTA, and the OCTA board is now opening up that issue again and is looking at how this can be accommodated. So the ultimate decision is Caltrans. OCTA can make a recommendation again, but Caltrans is the one that takes everything and makes a final determination on how to proceed with this project. So I don't know if Mayor wants to chime in.
Yeah, let me just tell you, I'll give you an update of it yesterday. They asked me to use the microphone, so it goes on. At last night's city council meeting, I asked that we schedule a closed session so that the city council can discuss pending litigation with regards to the 405 tollway. I think Raja kind of laid it out exactly where it's at, and I think the comment, Geisler Bridge is dead and it could come back like the 405s come back. The distinction there is OCTA, we can handle OCTA and do it. It's when the state jumps in. And it is just bizarre. And I don't want to get into the 3 levels of chess of how this is done. This is all about people who want to pour concrete, people in the construction industry, the money, the bonds. It's all about money. Is there a traffic issue to get up and down the 405? Yes. Is there enough money to fix the problem? Yes. There's about $1.4 billion, $1.5 billion to put in one extra lane. The most of the cost is redoing all the bridges. The bridges aren't wide enough. To add another lane was like $100 million. So it was noise. I mean, the big picture was noise. The reality of it is a tollway generates over a certain amount of time about $1.5 billion. And that's what this is about. If you look at what's happening throughout the state, they're shifting to a model to find other ways to pay for roads, and this is the direction that it's going. What's happening here is when the Orange County OCTA, we do what's called the locally preferred option, and it's just that. In the old days, locally preferred is what you got. Now it's like, thank you for sharing, but we're going to do this, and you have no say-so in it. I mean, no say-so in it. So what we're looking at is there's been an environmental impact report done. There's been a change in the environmental impact report because of some issues with Long Beach. I'm not going to get into the legal issues, but we don't feel that things have been addressed like they should have been. Like, why doesn't adding 2 lanes solve the problem of the 45 miles an hour for cars that go in there? Then we just had our governor just a couple days ago extend low emission vehicles for another 4 years. I mean, you could have solved the problem just by saying, no, you know what, low emission vehicles are doing fine. We don't have to give the benefit. The idea was to give the benefit to people to buy them, right? Well, they're buying them. They're buying them fine. They're subsidizing the heck out of them. So people are buying them. Do we need to give that a way to do it? The governor, again, signed it to extend it for 4 years, and they just, make up a law. I mean, this wasn't by mistake that some law said, oh, by the way, if you allow single cars in those things, you got to make sure they don't go below 45 miles an hour 90% of the time. It was done to, get more money into construction. How do you solve it? Well, just do those toll lanes. And, I was just out in the Inland Empire today. I went back. It's $5 each direction. And as they put these pieces together, this just gets us from, and understand, except for the toll lane portion, the actual ramp, we've already paid to build out our section. I mean, that's the one thing I think frustrates more than anything else. We paid to redo Fairview. We paid to widen. It's when you look at it just north of the Santa Ana River Channel, it wasn't widened. So we've already done everything. In fact, there's no taking a land to even add the tollway in, or if there is, it's very de minimis, some little edges, but it's not there. So what we're looking at is, like I said, we asked to go into closed session. We're trying to set that meeting up right now. It's probably to be later this week to decide what the council's going to do to go forward on it. And I've been on the phone with our supervisors, 3 of the supervisors already. I've been on the phone with all the OCTA people. I'm having meetings set up this following week with the people from Caltrans to try to see, what can be figured out here. But I'll be real frank with you. I'm not getting I'm not getting the answers we want to hear. I mean, this is a shove down at a level where, I think you might have been in one of the. I mean, it's indignant. Listen, we can do this. We're going to do this. Now, do you want to figure out, how to solve some of your problems? I mean, that's how the conversation's been so far. So it's not. I don't want to get anybody excited about it. We're just going to file some lawsuit and do it. It may just get us in front of the train and get run over. I don't know, but we have to do something about it because clearly this community came out and said, we're add the lanes, but this whole concept of tolling. I mean, what's it going to cost to get to John Wayne? if it's $5 just to get up to the 605. And they add the next, I mean, it's gonna be $30 to get there, and then it becomes this whole concept of the rich can afford it, so, anyway.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The Caltrans threat, I mean, the state's threat of toll lanes, I mean, the difference between when Caltrans does something and when OCTA does something is, what Caltrans is saying is if they do it, the toll revenue is $1.5 billion, goes to fix roadways across the state. Whereas OCTA is, what their promise is, if they do the toll lanes, they spend the money locally along the 405 corridor, just like they're doing on 91. So that's kind of the framework that the choice that we are faced with. Who does the toll lanes? It's not that it's a done deal at this point. I just want to, it's alarming, but there is a chance that they might still go with alternative 1 or 2, but it's looking very likely with the Caltrans threat that some kind of managed lanes or toll lanes is a possibility.
How long will it take Caltrans to make this happen and turn it into a completed reality from today?
From today, they want to make a decision by middle of next year, and if they do it, if OCTA makes a decision and goes ahead with the toll lane concept or any concept, they're ready to start construction by middle of 2015 and be done by 2019 or 2020.
Where does OCTA get the funds if they decide to
Do the toll lanes? They bond against it. It's a private partnership, public-private partnership, so the revenues are quite a bit. The forecast is big, so they can easily get money to do the project.
We experienced the toll lanes up on the 110 freeway, and you are tagged about 4 or 5 times in about a 10-mile stretch, and that just seems ridiculous to me. And so putting in more toll lanes does not seem like a good plan.
You mean the transponder is being yeah, what happens is even the proposal when they do the toll lanes, you would have 3 opportunities between here and 605 for people to get off or on. So every time you pass that, it pings to make sure that somebody new didn't get in. So that's what you're looking, and that's what you're experiencing. It's just because of the openings in the freeway in the toll lanes. No, they shouldn't be charging.
You talked about Caltrans and the OCTA, where does the toll group fit in?
The TCA, the toll road, they are an outside supporter of this one at this point, but their interest is they want to see a direct connection from 73 freeway to 405. So they want to build a new ramp that takes off from the middle of 73 and comes into the middle of 405. And that's where, as Mayor pointed out, there could be, there is an impact to Fairview Bridge. So we have to look at what it does to Fairview Bridge. At this point, they show that they have to remove and reconstruct the bridge to make it wider, along with all the other 20 bridges north of here. So that's something that we have to look into.
You mentioned there's going to be some construction at Harbor and Adams. What's going on there?
Okay, Harbor and Adams. When we did the study for Garfield Geisler Bridge, we came up with a list of improvements that need to be done. One was at Harbor Geisler, Fairview Adams. Harbor Adams is one of those improvements. We at Harbor Geisler, we added a new right turn lane, northbound right turn lane, and we made some modifications there, so that covered that project. Fairview Adams, we added a right turn lane, free flow right turn lane. At Harbor Adams, we will be adding a left turn lane, a new left turn lane going from eastbound Adams to northbound Fairview. and a new right turn lane going southbound Harbor to westbound Adams. So it's basically all the traffic that's coming, let's say from Huntington Beach side, going north towards the freeway. So that's where we are adding the lane. That's where we see a lot of traffic in the morning and coming back in the evening, and we are adding that capacity. And those improvements, we got grants to do that improvement, about $3 million worth of grants. So that'll be implemented starting January.
Great time for the bridge to close.
Well, we hope that with all these, we can convince OCTA that we should close that bridge. And, that would be a big relief for the community. And, we've been fighting this for now 30 years, so. Yes.
Is there any plan to get rid of the overhead power wires on the Adams? Go underground with it?
At this point, no. It's usually we work with Edison to make that happen, and we did 19th Street undergrounding a while ago, and that used up quite a bit of revenues, and we have to wait for the revenues to build up again under that particular program, and then we can consider other streets. We have several streets, Baker, Adams, a lot of them have those power lines.
You show a number of changes in the lower left-hand corner of the master plan highways.
Mhm.
Can you address what those are and why?
One is 17th Street. 17th Street is today a two-lane roadway, and at some point down the road, it needs to be widened to a four-lane roadway. It's per our master plan, and we have a lot of projects or development that needs to happen in that area. So this is all projections. I'm talking about 20, 30 years down the road. The other one that's going north-south is called Bluff Road. It doesn't exist today. That road is a future roadway that would come from Newport Beach, and it would come at 19th Street and then continue north on 19th towards Victoria. The stretch between 19th and Victoria, I know there was concerns or requests from community about deleting that from the master plan, and depending on city council interest and feedback, we'll pursue that. Yes.
This is more of a request. I have some photos, very amateur photos, of our intersection in Lower Bird, where we go in, and we have 7 utility boxes right in our intersection. And there are 2 or 3 of them block our traffic. We cannot see as we turn out. And I did a little survey with our street contacts, and this is the most concern that they have, are those boxes that we can't see. I had a meeting with UNESCO, and we did talk about undergrounding. And as he said, you're having to accumulate some money to do this. I'm hoping you'll put us to the forefront when you do undergrounding again. But those boxes, they're AT&T's.
Yes.
And he had me contact AT&T, and they were really rude. And basically told me that city council told them they could put them there, and that's where they're going to stay. So I would really like you to take a look at that and
Sure.
see what you can do. I do have some more photos here for you. If I can give these to you,
Yeah.
that show you exactly what we're dealing with. We have 7 boxes there.
Yeah.
And they
I'll
do
talk.
block the view.
Yeah. I'll get your contact information. Yes, sir.
Just to play on this comment, this morning as I went to work, turning on to Adams from this intersection, it was mentioned, I saw one of our neighbors getting into an airport shuttle and was just in front of me, and the traffic moves along there about 50, 55 miles an hour, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And why there wasn't a serious accident is this airport shuttle turned into oncoming traffic and brakes were slammed on to avoid hitting them. But that's just an example of the kind of thing that happens on that intersection. But I wanted to just ask about the question of priorities in road improvements. When you look at Adams, it's designated as a major right of way. And you can see that it compares to Harbor and Fairview and Bristol as a major point of entrance, a gateway into Costa Mesa, and also Victoria. We can all think about the way Victoria's been improved. We have some beautiful landscaping now on Fairview of the freeway. Bristol looks sharp, but Adams is a major gateway that looks pretty bad. I mean, it's basically pavement between block walls on either side with really no landscaping except right at the river and the signage there. So wouldn't it make sense to kind of prioritize these streets that are not only heavily used, but also kind of create a representation for people entering and leaving the city? More or less a question, I guess.
No, that's a good question. Actually, Adams is one of the streets where we will be considering medians. We did apply for grant funding on that project. We should hear soon. We were successful in getting grants for Placentia, so that will happen pretty quickly. Placentia between almost Adams to Wilson. So that's happening. We'll be designing that and implementing that. Adams, we requested that funding. We haven't heard from the Caltrans or feds who administer that grant, but it's definitely in our radar to make some improvements on Adams with respect to medians.
While we're on that subject, if I could throw one more idea out. There's a product Costa Mesa, one point of gateway into our city that always bothers me is the terminus of 55 at the 19 and that kind of weed-filled median there, which I think is Caltrans property.
Yes.
But has there been an effort or an inquiry to how that might really be dressed up in a way that makes you realize you're arriving in Costa Mesa?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. Again, I'm glad to tell you that most likely by December, we'll be awarding a construction contract there to do a gateway project. It'll include a large monument sign and enhanced landscaping at that particular location. So you're right on track with what we are looking at.
I lived there for almost 30 years and then I moved to this wonderful neighborhood, so I don't get to go through there.
Has the county finally given up on that eastward bridge?
We'll be doing a study on that in about 4 or 5 years again to see if they will agree to that removal. So at this point, it's in the backbone, it's in the background. It's not supposed to be used in any planning studies. So it's we were successful in at least coming to some agreement on that, but it's not taken out of the plan. We hope that we can convince them to remove that by 2020.
What can we as a community group do to make sure that that gets taken off? I mean, is there something that we can do?
General plan has the policy already. We have written policy. We have support from the council and community. So everybody is well aware of our position. I think it's a matter of timing. Exactly.
Every 2 years.
Yeah, it's a matter of timing. Nobody has money to do that particular bridge, but definitely something that we will be talking to OCTA to have that removed.
Russ, what's your timeline on the general plan in terms of submissions? You obviously are out gathering information from the community. What's your deadline from the standpoint of actually developing the general plan for the next 10, 15 years?
We'll be continuing these outreach meetings we have one coming up as Gary mentioned. We'll be going back to City Council to provide them a feedback of all the comments we heard, all the vision statements, and have the council approve the vision statements to proceed on the process. And then it's a matter of 6 to 7 months of analysis, and then we'll come back to council planning commission for approval. So we're looking at middle of next year.
Just a follow-up question to that. The mayor spoke in terms of Mesa Verde being, free of any changes from the standpoint of density. However, this is going to include the other parts of the city where we will be discussing density and infrastructure as
there will be density, I mean, there will be some development in other parts of the city, and that will cause traffic to increase on streets like Harbor or Adams. And it's not just Costa Mesa. We are surrounded by Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, and they're growing too. So we get their traffic. Regardless, even if we say we're done with our development, we still are going to grow. So that's going to happen. And we have on Harbor, or on any of these intersections, we have only intersection improvements. We don't have any more widening. We already widened all our streets in this area to its ultimate. So you'll be looking at minor tweaking of intersections, minor signal changes. It's nothing more significant than that. We might, for example, look at a signal at, I get complaints about people coming out of In-N-Out driveway onto Giesler, for example. That could be something that we'll be looking at. Things like operational improvements, but not necessarily capacity improvements.
I'm sorry, I'm confused now, because the process that you've described, as I understand it, or what I think I've heard you say, is you decide on a general plan, and that's the horse, and then you decide on the zoning, and that's the cart that follows along. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then, taking this church campus as an example, a developer can come along and look at what's allowed by the plan and look at what's qualified by the zoning and submit for a variance. So anything can happen in that system of checks and balances. There's an opportunity for every parcel to be developed in a way that it's not zoned for.
No change in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
You just described an instance tonight where you offered, or last night where you agreed for the variance.
Well, let me kind of get into that because,
I mean, I came from Corona Del Mar where everything.
I know. So let's kind of go through it. First off, because we did this same meeting over on the east side, and I think was really constructive, is we laid out a plan, the zoning plan of the city. And so people on the east side could look at it and say, you live in an R1 area or you live in an R2 area. If they live in an R2 area, they kind of know it. They've got these condos attached, okay? If you live in an R1 area, you've got single-family houses, or maybe some illegal granny units in the backyard, but they're not supposed to be there. And so when we're talking about the variances, variances are not for density. There's a big misnomer to that. You can build 7 units to the acre or 10 units and you get a variance to put more units in. The variances are for things like side yard setback, technical issues of open space, and all those kind of things. And what the Planning Commission looks at is saying, on the east side, let's just be honest, it was never master planned the east side. It was big blocks of land. There are 10 acre, 20 acres, down to 5 acres, chopped up into lots, different widths throughout the east side over in there. So you have areas that have R2. And I wish I had a map here to show you. It's not as many areas as you think, but there's areas R2. You'll drive down the street and you'll see these long rows of townhouses with all the garages lined up. That's an R2 area that's in there. What's happening in the development community is that lot can have 8 units. And based on our zoning rules, setbacks, open space, you can just put that building, plop it down, set it back properly, need 0 variances, and put in those eight units, okay? The marketplace and buyers don't want to buy these long block buildings of townhomes. They like having single-family houses. So what developers are coming in, and there's only a few of them that have been built, but you're seeing more of them come in there, is that they will build the exact same number of units. But because they're separated, they have some issues with our existing rules. So that's why we're looking at a small lots ordinance to say, you can't build any more units here than you're allowed to build right now. But instead of stacking them all together, you can build these nice, cute little houses, and they're very nice. High ceilings, double car garages, more than enough parking, 4 spaces per house. They have all those things in there. But it's not the row house building that has been built over the years, because that's not really what the marketplace is looking at. There's also all sorts of issues for developers and builders of not even being able to build it because of finance and insurance. You know how the homeowner association sues the builder and there's 10 houses. They're separate single-family houses. It makes it easier to develop and to build. But when you look at that, we have a rule that says, a simple rule, that you can put these 6 houses together, attach them, right? As soon as you move them 1 inch apart, they have to be 10 feet apart. Well, you're going, wait a second, we're trying to do something, so now your lot's only this big. You could fit the 6 of them in here. As soon as you go 10 feet apart, you can only put 4. It doesn't fit anymore. So the concept is, well, instead of having 10 feet apart, can you go 6 feet apart, the houses? Can you do certain things that fit so that instead of just building the block, because right now, the developer goes, fine, I'll just build the block. I'll just drop it back in again. It fits all the numbers. Everything works because that's how our code was, written to make it fit. So we're going to the next a different level, different standard. And so that's what that is. So when they say the variance, it's on the distinctions of the, not the envelope setback. Like if you got to be set back 5 feet from the side, you're still set back 5 feet from the next door neighbor's property. Not the houses in this lot. Your backyard setback still 20 feet. But the houses themselves, how they work amongst themselves, they can be different. And these are new buyers who decide, oh, that's fine with me. I can live with that. And they're choosing it, but the setbacks and all that don't affect the houses around them. Understand what I'm saying? It's only that issue there. And it has to be parked to the standards that we have in the city, which are the strictest standards, around, period. Nobody has what we have. Basically 4 car spaces per house. On site, you have to park. So that's what it is. And so when people say variances, don't jump to they can build more houses. Now, some people will say, well, if you didn't give them the variances, they'd build less houses. I hear you there. They could build less. The thing the council has to look at is a person has a right to build something on their property there. What do you want to direct them towards? The block building again or the smaller single-family house? So that's what the changes are. Once we have this small lot ordinance in, there won't be variances anymore. So we'll be able to say, 1 inch apart, got to go to 10. We'll say, hey, 6 feet's okay. Those kind of things.
You're talking about building on an acre, say, not just along the street where.
Correct. So if you go on the east side, what you have is these, 60 foot, 300 foot deep. Yeah, and they're just odd lots.
And the majority of variances I'm familiar with are actually driveways, where one wasn't allowed for and they cut into the street.
Yeah, that might have been. We haven't had that come up. Mostly the product that we're seeing come up. Go ahead.
Would each house have a driveway?
Yeah, everyone has a double car driveway in front of their house. Or one on a.
They all live on Santa Ana Avenue and they all have these driveways. And, well.
Yeah, I mean, it's 60, 70 feet wide. The garage is 20 feet deep. The driveway is 20 feet. That's 40. The driveway to park your cars is 20 feet deep. The driveway that comes in is 25 or 30 added up with a 5 foot setback. It fits. It works. And they've always done that as that long, blocky kind of row thing. Now we're just trying to find ways to separate them. Over here.
Yeah, I'd like to take a specific example of the senior housing
Yeah.
being built down here just south of the shopping center. Several of us remember a couple of years ago seeing a proposal for that looking north from Ace Hardware. And the artist's conception showed this big rolling grass lawn out front with a smaller building set back against the shopping center. Suddenly they started building it, and we had this massive unit being built within about 10 feet all the way around the thing. And if there's any grass, it must be hidden back between the shopping center and the building. How did we get from the one to the other?
Well, 2 things. Whenever somebody shows me a rendering, I go, thank you very much, and I push that to the side, and I look at the actual site plan that's in there. That project, I want to say, was approved for, they went, I think, for 240 units. Well, let's back up. It's a retail site. It was part of the whole plan there. They came in for Kohl's. Based on the traffic issues and all that what comes from retail, it was pretty clear from the community we weren't interested in that. Went back to the drawing board of what to do next in there. Obviously, even forgetting these numbers of generational age issues, there is a big demand for people in Costa Mesa who do not want to have their house anymore, but want to stay in the community, want to stay in the neighborhood, their churches, be involved. They don't want to move. They want to stay in the area. There's a massive demand for that. If you go to a senior project in there, the traffic model just crashes the amount of traffic that it brings. So the same amount of building area, I don't have the ratios, but they're just not comparable at all.
Just think about it. How often do you drive when you're a senior in there? The Segerstroms came in what's considered to be an extremely high quality. This is not an inexpensive place. I mean, a lot of people are not going to be able to afford to live here. It's got an indoor cinema. It's very, very nice. It's a project that they're putting a lot of time and effort in there. They're putting in full-size specimen trees, uplighting, the whole thing in there. So I think they ended up, I think we approved like 230 units, I could be wrong, but I think they ended up only building 215 units. They work with the homes next door, the newer homes, what's the project called? I always forget the name. What?
Mesa Verde
The
Collection.
collection, yeah. And they lowered the houses down. Those people were happy to get rid of a parking lot that had stuff going on all the time at night. They were very happy about where the changes from there. But what they're doing is they're filling a demand for what's needed. I asked the other day where the list is at right now, the 250 units. There's over 300 people on the list in there. Over 75% are from Costa Mesa. They may be in this room. I mean, the people want to stay in the community, they want to be in here. And so that is different, and that's what a high-end senior project looks like. They're not going to be on big lots. They're going to be different in there. So it is a bit different. But from the traffic standpoint and those other issues in the neighborhood, it changes. Then also, obviously, the streets can all be redone, as it gets finished over in there. In fact, I think I just saw today they started doing the gutters across where Mesa Verde East hits. The turnout, yeah. Over here.
That actual line, where's the parking in that area?
It's in behind.
Over toward that housing collection area?
No, it's actually, if you look closely, you'll see archways that cars go in. One's a porte cochere in front that guests and stuff would come into, and then between that porte cochere, kind of the three-story in between harbor, you'll see you can't tell because there's scaffolding, but a whole archway, and you drive back into a gated, it's all gated and secured parking lot back there.
A parking lot to hold over 200 cars and...
Yeah, oh yeah, it's totally parked. I mean, the way it's structured over there and how you have that street, you can't park on that street. When you get to certain size developments, when you're building a 4-plex or a 12-plex or whatever, we just have really strict standards of what the number has to be. After that, when you get to large, they know in an industry how much parking something's used in there, and then we'll look at the standards that we say they should have, and they'll come in with their standards, and we can see what a senior project has. You'll have 2 people, you're not gonna have 2 cars. Some people might have 2 cars, but some have none. I mean, we're having a lot of people well into their 70s and into their 80s too in here. It's not assisted living, but a lot of people want a nice place, they want to be around their friends and family, but they just don't want the house anymore. So, there and then back over here.
Could you give us more information on increase or decrease in the density in the west side, or what?
Yeah. So on the west side, how many years ago was the overlay done? I mean,
2005.
2005 it was done. They worked on it for, I don't know, 5, 6 years? Years.
I was on that committee.
You were on it, so you loved every minute of it, right? So the conversation's always been in the city, the highest, most valuable property we have closest to the ocean is a bunch of industrial buildings, and we've all heard that. Obviously, over time, there's been, the industries are leaving for a lot of reasons. Most of it has to do with AQMD. The boat guys can't use their chemicals and their painting and those type of things over there. So that's shifted and that's changed. What the council agreed back in that time was to do what's called an overlay. And it's basically to do a traffic neutral plan that said they can overlay residential in that area over the industrial area, and the property owners would get a choice what they want to do. Now, there's some restrictions, and some of the large employers over there got very concerned about people right up on their backyard. But there wasn't a zone change. They didn't change the zone, because if they changed the zone and you got a factory and you want to expand your factory, you're legal because you were legal when you built it, but you're non-conforming. You can't expand your business or grow. And they came in there and they said, you can bring housing into here. When that was done and put in place, a couple projects were approved, and then the economy just crashed. So nothing happened over there. So the general plan that we're looking at from the standpoint of the overlays isn't really going to change. But what we are seeing with the change in the economy right now is some of the projects have gotten built. So one of the projects that actually just released the other day on 18th Street, you know how dead ends at the Seabreeze, those houses at Seabreeze, you ever see those? So it's all industrial, 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 and then there's a gated community, and Wendy Lease lives there. There was about a 2-acre lot next to it, and these live, work, small lot homes were done over there. Now these are different than what's happening on the east side. The east side's a 2-story, smaller kind of house. These are tall houses, so they're more urban, and it matches into that concrete tilt-up industrial buildings that are around them. And what Live Work has is that they'll have a downstairs. Your front door comes into a room that's an office. Can't be a bedroom because actually the front door comes into it and the garage comes into it. And people can, their engineering business, their mortgage business, their whatever type of business you'd have an office in, where you could do it in your own home here, except you don't want to take your client into your third bedroom. You know, it's structured that way. And so there's 30, I think it was 30 houses. It was approved, I think 6 years, 6 years ago? 7?
2008.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was on the planning commission then. We approved it, and it never happened. What's amazing is we have no idea of what happened there, but when they built these 3-story houses, the 3rd story sees the ocean. And the 4th then has a roof deck on every unit. So if you can imagine, all of a sudden you go to this roof deck and you see Palos Verdes, Spyglass, and you're amazed. You're like, okay, no, 92626, where am I at? I mean, it doesn't, so is that going to be the place that me and my 3 kids are going to? No. That's the place where you're going to go. There's flights of stairs. They're 10-foot ceilings, so you can imagine the stairs. But the young families and the young entrepreneurs and that whole west side, you know, we have, you know, Hurley, Billabong, Volcom, a massive part of the surfwear industry is down there, and they have really no place to go into that they like. And so these came out at, I think, $575 price. They released 5 one weekend, gone. Released another 5 last weekend, gone, sold. There's other projects in there that these type of products will happen in there. And what will happen on the west side is we'll see a transformation of some new product. But what the biggest thing is going to be is you're going to see old product redone once you have vibrancy and people living there with money in their pocket. So then you're going to see old warehouses turn into cool shopping areas and restaurants and those type of things. But you have to have people who spend that money. Right now, there's nothing that happens there, and we get no value out of the ocean. And I would ask any of you to go take a look at it. It's a long climb to the roof deck, I'm telling you right up front. But you look around, I mean, you know, on a clear day, I can't wait till the wintertime when they see the snow in the mountains. That's what you're looking at. It's really nice. And that'll be out there. And so that area is going to change. Now, that was done on a balance of the traffic model for the zoning in there. Some of the things that we're looking at in circulation is what else can we do for some of these intersections to fix that west side. But about 20-some years ago, we had a new traffic model in here when Sandy came on the council. And it's served us well for, you know, 85% of the city. The traffic studies that we showed 20 years ago said all these intersections were going to be blocked. Well, people like Raja and people before him worked at continuing to widen left turn pockets, right turn pockets, and all these intersections that were supposed to be bad. You know, you're not out in the country somewhere, but traffic moves. It moves at these intersections that we have. So that plan worked. The west side is a big problem because of we have, as you said earlier, the 55 freeway dead ends into our town. And that's 100,000 cars. There's no way as such to fix that except for the plan that we have, which is an undergrounding plan, which is an express lane to, if you're going to go to the beach, go underneath and get out, and then we can kind of shrink our streets up on top, get more elbow room again, you know, that kind of thing. That's a big, long plan to get into. That's things that Raj and his team is working at. Don't ask me where the $400 million is coming from, or the 300. But if you don't have a plan, you're never going to get there. So the west side is going to see the issues. The other issue, and I'll say it right now, is the motels. The motels are a massive, massive drain on our city. The bad ones, the dozen. We have some great hotels, and they're fantastic, and they do well. But I don't even want to tell you what happens across the street in some of these motels. You go on a ride along It's pimps, prostitutes, at methamphetamine, drugs. It's become de facto a horrible place that people think is a great place for affordable housing for families, which is just wrong. No kid should be raised in 180 square feet. I mean, to open a door.
That's the county's answer to affordable housing.
I know, and that's
Sorry.
yeah, I know, and that's just wrong.
It is.
I know, it's wrong.
That's the county's answer.
I know,
to
I know,
affordable
I know.
housing is motel.
And the county shifted on it. They've understood that that's not working because, you know, our smallest unit we allow in the city is, I think, 500 feet studio, maybe 480. These are 120 feet, 200, 180 feet, and when we go to inspection, there's 4 people sitting on a bed. I mean, you want to cry. It's horrible. Yet, and they're right next door is pimps and prostitutes and all these things. If you look at the amount of calls that we have for service, the effect it does to our police department is unbelievable. It's been going on for years. I don't know if people just don't want to bite the bullet and solve the problem. But to bite the bullet, we have to somehow find a way to get the value of that property to be worth more, not as a motel. And as they are absolute cash cows. So if you take the Costa Mesa Inn, that had 500 calls for service last year. That's 2 a day. Police, fire, medical. That has 50 units to the acre. It's 4 acres. It has 200 and some units. Okay? Now, they're little ones. What would you rezone that to trade and get rid of it? Well, we'd all like to just put, 6,000 square foot lots and put, 24 houses there. That's not going to work. It's going to take a zoning level and those properties to get that trade, to get rid of that. And that's the conversation the community has to have. When I look at this and I go to the community, I say, we're trying to change this. Do you really want to change it? If you don't want to change it, just don't. We rezoned a lot of it residential years ago on Newport Boulevard. Nothing happened. 12 units to the acre is not going to make someone take down a motel that brings them millions of dollars a year. It's just not going to happen. And we've now pushed up enforcement. You notice we just did a nuisance ordinance we approved last night. We're going to have a lot more teeth and tools. And we're going to start another ordinance we have coming in place, which is going to start saying when you have an excessive amount of police and fire calls, and it's a high level, based on your size, you will start paying for those. You will get your bill for $200 or $300, whatever the study comes out to do, to push down some of these values. But the question for the community is, if we're just going to say, you know what, I don't want to do anything different, they're just going to stay. And I'm open to any ideas. I mean, I have people say, well, why don't we put a shopping center there? Well, great. If a shopping center pencils out to make it work, it'll go away fine. I can tell you it's not going to. It's going to take basically the same zoning it has now, which is 40 or 50 units to the acre, but in little apartments, into normal, high-end, granite countertop, 10-foot ceiling, high-end stuff, where people are paying $2,200 a month. And that's traffic neutral, because it's the same number of units. But it's something we got to discuss. And what usually happens is people go, there's more density, there's more stuff, we don't want it. Okay, I'll take you on a ride along and watch, wasting 4 policemen's time. You arrest one person, then the next person, then someone's doing the drugs in here, and then we got the parolees the state is dumping. Where do you think they go? Newport Beach? They go to places that have the motels, the cheap rooms. And if you want to move crime numbers down, it's who lives in your town and who you attract. Having these kind of places to attract people that thank God most of us don't have drug and alcohol problems, okay? We know people that do. It's a horrible, horrible thing. But we can't be attracting that to our community. So we got to find ways to get rid of them. Go ahead.
Mayor, considering, the census and the infrequency which they conducted, what are the demographics now? Does the city have a good grasp on the demographics of Costa Mesa and obviously, and if you could also speak to that, and then what the current population of Costa Mesa is?
Well, I mean, I think we know what the current population is. And we just saw here some numbers saying if everybody stays for 20 years. Now, I've seen these numbers and I've heard about we're always going to get to be an older. I think the bubble is the older part of the generation that's here right now that's getting older. But the reality of it is many, many people have lived in Costa Mesa at one time when they were younger. And they lived in an apartment because we have 60% apartments and we're 60% rental, 40% housing, and then they've moved out. So I don't know that I completely agree that everybody's going to stay here and we're all going to get older. I think there's the 22, 24 years old that are just here, and then they move out. And I think our age will, it'll move up a little bit, but I don't know if it's going to move up that much. I think the West Side will bring in a lot of vitality for, quite frankly, people that are highly educated, because that's what a live work attracts, to buy their own property in their homes. I mean, you go down to the showroom and you see the couples walking in. I mean, these are who you want to have for your neighbors doing it. So that'll attract more people that'll be which will be clearly, obviously, more homeowners.
Well, if you're speaking of population, and I'm speaking of ethnicity, demographics from that standpoint, maybe we should be clearer.
Oh, I think we're becoming more homogenous everywhere in Orange County. Everywhere in Orange County, all the way through. I mean, I think it's just shifting and changing. Some areas of the county have a lot more Asian influence, but if that's continuing to grow throughout the county in here. I mean, you look at our Costa Mesa High School did one Chinese class, immediately went to 2 Chinese classes, and they need a 3rd. And these are kids here who aren't Chinese, who realize that that's the language in the future they have to be looking at there. Here and then there.
I'd like to applaud you for being proactive on the homeless situation and the hotel
Yeah.
situation. I think it's very important to the image of the city.
Yeah, I think the homeless situation, again, it's a problem. These are individuals. These are human beings. They got to be treated that way. And we're going to do things in the city. We've got a 10-point plan to help people get out of homelessness. But as I said the other day, to feed people in a park is not a plan. You feed them breakfast, they're hungry at lunch. You have to change people and who they are. We've got over 50 churches in the community. We've got a dozen of them working together. We've gotten most of the churches pretty much 100% to quit feeding in the park. That's not a strategy. And these are good Christian people that think it's important to help the poor. We look at help the poor long term. So we brought one of our neighbors right here in Mesa Verde, Larry Haynes. Does everybody know Larry? Larry runs Mercy House. It's probably the best as far as the best methods. What do they call it? The best methods to take care of homeless is basically to get people off of homeless. You can't feed people enough or take care of them enough. They have to take care of themselves. Now, there's obviously people that have other issues, and as a society, we help take care of them. But that's not just Costa Mesa. So what we've done in Costa Mesa is we will help people, but they have to have a connection to Costa Mesa. They have to have lived here, family here, gone to school here. It can be a loose connection, but you can't come in from New Jersey and say, take care of me. We cannot have a magnet, and that's what I constantly tell these groups. We will do whatever it takes to help, and we're very generous to help. But if it becomes a magnet, we can't, because then you've just defeated the whole purpose. And so by doing this method, by doing this method, what's happened is City of Orange is now taking care of their homeless. Fullerton is taking care of theirs. Tustin is. So we're talking to other cities, say, everybody take care of yours, and you can ease the burden. We don't cause magnets for people to come other places, and I think it really solves the problem for the community. Here? Go.
I noticed a lot of homes and structures in our used to be single-family homes, wonderful neighborhoods. Now they're mansionized and building illegal structures, inviting families by the droves full and cars. Not permitted in our neighborhood single-family area, which causes neighbors who are good, who are going to permits, who are trying to obey the laws, having our privacy and problems violated, and one agency of the city says, no, it's not a responsibility, go to the other agency, and we're going in circles.
I'm going to give you my card. It has my cell phone number on it. I answer it. And if there's an illegal house with not permitted in there, we'll take care of it. And I understand you hit 754, hit numbers, you start bouncing around, and it's.
And I like your new law coming in, what was it called again?
Nuisance ordinance.
I like that. I think
Yeah.
that's great.
Well, but it'd be nice because a lot of people come down there and say, well, what are you going to do? You're going to take my house. I mean, what do you think we are, Irvine? And I'm like, no, we're not Irvine, but we need some tools, folks. Every other city has a nuisance ordinance. We need some tools, and they have to be appealable, and there has to be issues. You're not here to take someone's house, but you're here to solve a problem. We have hoarding in houses, and we just showed a lot of pictures last night. These are people with psychological issues. that we didn't have a process in place, or we didn't push the process in place. Now with this nuisance ordinance, it helps us go up there and say, listen, we need you to get this house cleaned out. Usually it's trying to get a hold of a family member to help the family. And if you see some of these before and after pictures, people have next door neighbors that have stuff stacked up in the backyard to the fence, the whole thing, and we had no tools to solve that problem. Now we do.
Real quick question, how do you authenticate the residency of the homeless?
You know what, they ask them questions, they go through, I'm not an expert at it in there, but you know, there has to be a connection. We do. The hardest thing was to get the church volunteers to recognize why we did this, because most of them, their hearts just go out and say, let's help people. And once they understood why it mattered and they came on board, it made a difference. But you can find out that they've gone to school here, they had family here. You ask questions, you check things out. I can't tell you the exact process in there. Yeah, it's in there. And a lot of people we have volunteering in the church is just helping people get their IDs again. What'll happen is they'll go homeless, they'll lose their IDs, their family photos, they have nothing. They can't get SSI, they can't get veterans benefits. And so we have some people that all they do is they're volunteering to help them get a set of IDs and get them. And then now, like say, if you're homeless and you're a veteran, there's housing vouchers for you. You can get out of homelessness right now. There's enough for every veteran out there to do that. People don't realize that. So the story of a homeless veterans on the street, if you get to them and you get their IDs, they get off right away. They've got money to do that. Other ones is not as much, but they sometimes just need IDs, connections to family. I think we've had, and I don't want to say, over a dozen people in this last year that we've gotten them back to their family. The churches, people donate money, get the plane tickets, hook them back with their family, get them back to Ohio. You know, back where they have some people there.
A lot of them are mentally disturbed people. I do a lot of riding laws since I was with the police department for years. And it's interesting when we interview some of these guys, they have no purpose.
Right.
Absolutely no purpose. We have one who's a veteran, he gets a $1,500 check, and he blows it on suits and stuff, and he's a homeless person. It's the craziest thing.
Well,
and he does it every month. We arrest him almost every month, and he's back on the streets pushing 3 carts, and it's just incredible.
Yeah.
And
So,
they don't understand it.
yeah, there's people that have mental issues, some alcohol issues. There's all those things in there. But understand that you can give out carrots to help out. Part of the program is we have to have sticks. And if you've got problems and issues and you want to get help, we're going to help you, and we're going to work towards doing that. But if you just think I want to party at the park, and I don't care, and I can be here, it's move along. And so we're working on those things. Part of that issue is with like the camping bans, to stop people from camping in public spaces, you have to have a place for them to go. Okay? Now, that's going to be a tough decision in the council, but we're looking at some product and areas. I don't think Mesa Verde wants that, right? This is where, right? Okay. But there's areas by the airport. There's areas that we can do some housing in there. If you have a place for people to go, then you can enforce some of your other rules that I have in there. But I think the problem can be solved.
I have a sort of peripheral question, General Plan. Is to some degree I pick up a lack of sense of community by a lot of people, not everybody, but and some of the how do we encourage as part of, in the sense of the general plan of the city, to create more active community-based organizations. We're members of Friends of the Library, can produce programs to bring people together, other organizations, churches, whatever it takes to get, the only way we're going to get a functional, smooth community, get people together, different groups to act as a group. The village, we need to become a village.
Right. So he's talking about what's happened in our community. So our community is a certain age. It was developed at a certain time. And we had a different, you talk about a demographic, we had a different demographic. We had more moms at home. And in many ways, our communities were tied together because kids in school, moms together, talking, communicating, and a lot of the organizations worked with that fact. Now that resource is people have jobs and moms work, and they're not there for the connection. So when your city was kind of built out on 7,000 square foot lots and spread out, it is harder to do that. I don't think people want to change it and more densify it, but that's kind of what some of the urban planners like, just stack everybody up, put them all together, and we'll all get happy together. I don't think that's what we're looking for here. I mean, I think we want to have some areas like, look what's happening with the Triangle. I mean, that thing went from 20 years dead. I mean, they have a parking problem, okay? That's a high-class problem. A parking problem. I've been to the restaurants, the theater, and my wife takes the girls there. They got inexpensive prices, great seat. I mean, it's done phenomenal, but that had to really, be shifted. And some people want to live around that and more hipper, cooler, that kind of stuff. Not here. Not in this neighborhood.
What's that project behind the Ford dealership? The apartments or condos being built?
The project behind the Ford. Okay. Yeah. So 1900 is the office building in front, and then there was a condo project that was behind
Now they
it.
built something else.
So basically it was approved for a condo project, and only half of it got built. The parking structure got in. So basically,
They're finishing it up.
yeah, but it's a different product than what was back over in there. It's Fairfield. It's kind of that, you'll see it when it's done. It's that very high end. I don't know how people afford rent like this, but there's a whole generation of younger people, if they can get a job, which is another issue, that have watched their parents go through this whole tumultuous real estate world. They're not interested in buying a house. And so you're seeing these new apartment complexes with pools that look like something out of hotels, with canopies and 10-foot ceilings and granite countertops. And they're really looking to kind of go back to, my parents, my grandparents' generation in the Midwest and the big cities where you had a flat and it was nice and you raised your family there. So that's what we're starting to see is these very expensive apartments. And any other, back here. And did you I'm sorry, I think I missed you.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Just a question, you talk about the rest of
This is a great general plan meeting, right?
the cedar project, it's off of Harbor, and you make sure right there.
Yeah.
Is it owner occupied or is it rental?
It'll be rental.
It's rental.
It's rental, yeah. Yeah. The senior project, yeah. It's gonna be expensive. It's not it's a very. Bavante is a different project. Now Avante's very expensive. Okay. It starts at $4,000 a month. Now that includes all your meals and a 550 Mercedes to take you to Fashion Island. It's $30,999, and it is unbelievable. You walk inside this place, they're half leased up already. They haven't even opened. They're opening this next month. But that location is, the area is changing. So that's where the overlay is. Avante is on the west side, south of 17th at Monrovia. And again, the third floor and the roof deck have ocean views in the middle of an industrial area. But okay, so what's the big thing about that? People are getting older. There is assisted living there. There is also a memory unit there. And it's paintings on the walls, high end. There's dining, you have your restaurants, all your meals are included, all that's in part of it in there. And it's very close to Hogue, and that's what families want when they've got a very, both my parents passed away this last year and a half, both in their 80s. And, we didn't have choices of places like this. I mean, if people can afford it, this is where you want your, this is beautiful. And there's people there all day long to watch them and take care of them, but yet it's a setting with dining. You got to go look at it. Get open up. Go see it. You'll be stunned about how nice it is. Saltwater indoor swimming pools. It's amazing. Okay, here and then I'll there.
This one I think is for Raja. Avalon, southbound on Harbor, right turn on Mesa Verde. I thought I saw a plot plan in planning commission that showed a right turn pocket there. Is that going to happen or not?
They're in there.
Yeah, they're working on it right now.
Today, yeah.
Because if they take more out of the sidewalk and move the signal back, they're going to be 2 feet away from the building.
Well, you have to wait for the construction to be over and all the fences to be taken down because they over excavate. They take more of the land, they open up, and then once they build it, you'll see that they still have the 20-foot setback and all that stuff.
But it is going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they did the turn pocket into the porte cochere or out of it, whatever.
Mhm.
And I said, oh, that looks nice. It's what plan on it. I said, I don't see any clear markings or clear fence. They didn't move the signal, but it's going to happen.
It's happening right now.
Actually, today, they poured the concrete today on one piece of it.
Yeah, I haven't been by
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Come on,
In
let's
about, in
go.
about 3 weeks, it should be done.
And then here.
Well, my question, I guess, would be maybe for Gary or Minoo. When we moved here back in the 80s, and we're newcomers, I realize, but the Mesa Verde Center was a wonderful child recreation destination. We had the pizza parlor, we had the ice skating rink, we had the bowling alley, we had the movie theater. I could give my kids $10, see ya, you know, and they would, you know, spend the weekend there. Is there anything going on, you know, besides soccer fields, you know, for, and I don't mean to mean soccer fields, but I mean, you know, some kind of, you know, entertainment for kids.
I mean,
And my kids are
Yeah,
out of the house now, but you know, I really weep for the next generation because that is what attracted us to this area.
yeah, and the roller rink, which was the Tower Records, is now going to be a Walgreens over in there. So as things get older and they, you know, when you talk to the Segerstrom family, and I asked them about it, they said, you know, we did the skating rink for basically almost free. We did the bowling alley. There wasn't, everybody has nostalgia about it, but there was no demand for it, and it just kind of dies off. And then people have competing things that they're doing between work, and then, you know, then you get the Metro Point built, and you get stadium seating, and people like that differently. Now we've got the triangle. So what happens is some things kind of die off and some things kind of change. It's that, you know, I mean, I got 3 little girls at home. I'd love to say $10. I'll give them $20. Be gone. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, an ice skating rink or something like that was in there, but the ice skating rinks with energy costs and all those things have just been something there. As much as we liked it, apparently not enough of us used it. And just, that's what happens. If there's not anything else, I think we're way past our time. Again, as your, I know he probably wants to finish up, but you know, I want to say as your mayor, I'm very proud to be the mayor of Costa Mesa and to be your mayor. If there's any questions or concerns you have out there, there's always kind of stuff going on in the city, but I want you to know that the 5 people on the council really care about this city. It gets a little testy sometimes. That's okay. But that's really okay because it gets things aired out. I think many times things haven't over the years been, and let's face it, you can just read the papers and see what's happening over here. But we're going the right direction. We're definitely going the right direction.
You said something about doing something with Adams, the back of, you know, I live on Adams, I've been there for 42 years.
The back of Adams.
Yeah, I want to know what are they going to do? You said they were going to do something on the street.
Oh, the medians. You know how you've got the center is just asphalt? So we're looking at throughout the city adding medians to the plants and the trees and stuff. It's a beautiful look. You do uplit trees. It just gives a fantastic look. Yeah. Yeah.
I love living there, and I've lived there for
Okay.
42 years.
You mean the medium all the way in Adams? and
Yeah.
Gateway?
No. Say like you go from Huntington Beach up. There's only a left turn to get into like Albatross, whatever, right? And then there's up there at Mesa Verde East and West, but the rest is 12 feet of asphalt that should have plants and trees and look gorgeous. It should. You should. I think the word was drive window. Okay, perfect. We got to go.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Well, I'd really like to thank the mayor and city staff here, Gary, Minoo, and Raja for coming in. A lot of good questions, and as you can see, this general plan is not very simple. We all have needs and wants, and unfortunately, you know, some of them will not be incorporated and some will, but it takes a lot of work, and we have our wish list, and I think this is a time to let them have that information. So when they go back to the table and start making the decisions, they in essence then can take this into consideration, and hopefully, you know, we'll end up walking away from it and being happy. But I really liked the fact that we've got you here this evening and had you open up and share these ideas, because this is really what they're seeking as far as that's concerned. And you know, when you talk about the village and just the kumbaya and coming together, Mesa Verde MVCI, the people that you see here now are all volunteers. I've been with this organization for 12 years now, and we have continually opened our doors to try and get new input and individuals to come in. on a volunteer basis to help us. I mean, we've got a diverse group of people in terms of professions and experience, but we're always open and receptive to new individuals coming in to bring those ideas. And I think this, kind of setting to hear that you're looking to try and get people to work together, this is what we're all about. So before you leave, if there's any interest in joining our board, please stop by the table here and let Kim know that, and we'll be more than happy to send you an email. Okay? But remember, it is a non-paid job. Okay? Okay, I should state that up front. But again, if there aren't any other questions for the city staff, and I want to applaud them for their time and thank you very much for that. I'd like to just go ahead and thank you again and just conclude our meeting and wish you a great evening. Okay, thank you very much.